Hello everybody, welcome to Friday's Reads. This is where I feature a collection of short stories to get some of the wonderful short story collections that are out there a bit on the map. We sometimes don't shout loud enough about short story collections. So this week it's going to be The Little Tales of Misogyny by Patricia Highsmith. Now that took some saying. Little Tales of Misogyny. Patricia Highsmith, very renowned author. She wrote many iconic books, I suppose, back in the 50s. Strangers on a Train, which was then made into an Alfred Hitchcock film. And let me try and think what one of her other famous novels. The Talented Mr. Ripley. Which she wrote in about 1955. Now that's been recently made into a film with Matt Damon. I think it's Matt Damon actually that's in that. And this one, Little Tales of Misogyny, is a bit of a cult, has a bit of a cult following. Now it was out of print. It was out of print, but just trying to see, Virago Modern Classics, there's been a publication of a lot of her works. I've got a few others which are novels, not short stories, which I'm going to take a look at and probably feature later on. But this is a collection of short stories, and I think that there's a little bit of wry humour involved in her writings. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek at times, you know, you've got to sometimes what they say, take it with a pinch of salt, but very well liked author. And yeah, even doesn't matter what age we are, most people will have heard of Strangers on a Train and The Talented Mr. Ripley. So here we go. Now the one I've chosen to read this week for you to showcase this, let's find where my little tag is. It's called The Silent Mother-in-Law. The mother-in-law, Edna, had heard all the jokes about mothers-in-law, and she had no intention of being the butt of such jests, or falling into any of the traps with which her path is so amply sprinkled. First of all, she lives with her daughter and son-in-law, so she's got to be doubly or triply careful. She would never dream of criticising anything. The young people could come home dead drunk, and Edna would never comment. They could smoke pot. In fact, they do sometimes. They could fight and throw crockery at each other, and Edna wouldn't open her mouth. She'd heard enough about mothers-in-law intruding, and she keeps a button lip. In fact, the oddest thing about Edna is her silence. She does say yes thank you to a second cup of coffee and good night, sleep well, but that's about it. The second outstanding thing about Edna is her thriftiness. Little does she suspect that it gives Laura and Brian a pain in the neck, because they are also trying to make the best of it, trying to be polite, and would never dream of saying that her thriftiness gives them a pain in the neck. For one thing, thrift obviously gives Edna so much pleasure. She exhibits a huge ball of saved string, as often other mother-in-laws might show a quilt they had made. She puts every last orange pip into a plastic bag destined for the compost heap. Oh, heck, she'd drive me mad. Couldn't have a living with me. It would cost Laura and Brian about $300 a month to set Edna up in a flat by herself. Edna had some money which she contributes to their household, but if she lived alone, Laura and Brian would have to commute and contribute far more than she costs them now. So they let well enough alone. Edna is 56, rather lean and wiry, with short curly hair of mixed grey and black. She's not old, is she, to make her sound like she's ancient? She's younger than me. Her habit of scurrying about doing things, she has a humped posture and gait. She's never idle and seldom sits. When she does sit, it is usually because someone has asked her to. Then she flings herself about in a chair and folds her hands with an attentive expression. She nearly always has something useful stewing on the stove, like apple sauce, or she has started to clean the oven with some chemical product, which means Laura can't use the oven for at least the next hour. Laura and Brian have no children as yet, because they are foresighted people, and in the back of their minds they are trying to think how to install Edna somewhere graciously and comfortably, even at their own expense, and after that they'll think of raising a family. All this causes a strain. The house is a 2-storey affair in a suburb 25 minutes drive from the city, where Brian works as an electronic engineer. He has good hopes for advancement and is studying in his spare time at home. Edna takes a swat at the garden and lawn mowing, so Brian hasn't too much to do on weekends, but he has a feeling Edna is listening through the walls. Edna's room is next to their bedroom. See, that's why they haven't got any children, because they don't do anything, because she's there. Sorry, I digress. There is an attic which is unheated. In the attic, which Brian and Laura would gladly make habitable, Edna is collecting jam jars, cartons, wooden crates, old Christmas boxes and wrapping paper, and other things which might come in handy one day. Brian can't get a foot in the door now without knocking something down. He wants to have a look at the attic to see how difficult it might be to insulate it. The attic has become Edna's property somehow. If she'd only say something even now and then, Brian said one day to Laura. It's like living with a robot. Laura knew. She had assumed a chatty, extra pleasant manner with her husband, with her mother even, in hopes of drawing her out. I'll just put this here. And the ashtray can just as well go here, Laura would say as she pottered about. Edna would nod and smile a tense approval and say nothing, though she would be hoovering to help. The atmosphere was driving Brian round the bend. He frequently muttered curses. One night when he and Laura were at a party in the neighbourhood, an idea struck Brian. He told Laura his plan and she agreed. She'd had a few drinks and Brian told her to have another. Laura and Brian drove home after the party, undressed in their car, walked up to the front door and pushed the bell. A long wait, they giggled. It was after 2 a.m. and Edna was in bed. Edna at last arrived and opened the door. Howdy doody, Edna, said Brian, waltzing in drunk. Evening, Mama, said Laura. Flustered and horrified, Edna blinked, but soon recovered enough to laugh and smile politely. Well, aren't you surprised? Say something, Brian cried. But not being as drunk then as Laura. He seized I can't talk right, it's making me laugh. He seized a soft pillow and held it so as to cover his nakedness, hating himself as he did so, for it was rather as if he had lost his guts. Laura was executing a solo ballet, quite uninhibited. Edna had vanished into the kitchen. Brian pursued her and saw that she was making instant coffee. Listen, Edna, he shouted. You might at least talk to us. No, it's simple, isn't it? Please, for the love of God, say something to us. He was still clutching the pillow against himself, but he gesticulated with the fist of his other hand. It's true, Mama, Laura said from the doorway. Her eyes were full of tears. She was hysterical with conviction. Speak to us. I think it's disgraceful, if you want me to say something, said Edna. The longest sentence she had uttered in years. Drunk and naked besides. I am ashamed of you both. Laura, take that raincoat from the downstairs hall. Take anything, and you, my son-in-law. Edna was shrieking. The kettle water seethed. Edna fled past Brian and scurried upstairs to her room. Neither Brian nor Laura remembered much of the hours after that. If they hoped they had broken Edna's silence permanently, they soon found that they were wrong. Edna was just as silent the next morning. Sunday, though, she did smile a little, almost as if nothing had happened. Brian went to work on Monday as usual, and when he came home, Laura told him that Edna had been unusually busy all day. She had also been silent. I think she's ashamed of herself, Laura said. She wouldn't even have lunch with me. Brian gathered that Edna had been busy stacking firewood, cleaning the barbecue pit, peeling green apples, sewing, polishing brass, searching through a large garbage bin, for God knew what. What is she doing? Brian asked with a prickle of alarm. At the same moment he knew Edna was in the attic. There was an occasional creak of floorwood from the way upstairs, a clunk as she set down a carton of glass jars of some such. We should leave her alone for a bit, said Brian, feeling he was being manly and sensible. Laura agreed. They didn't see Edna at dinner. They went to bed. Edna seemed to go to work through the night, judging from the noises on the stairs and in the attic. Around dawn a terrible crash occurred, against which Brian had once warned Laura. The attic floor was made of laths, after all just nailed to rafters. Edna fell through the floor. Oh dear. Along with jam jars, crates, raspberry preserves, rocking chairs, an old sofa, a trunk and a sewing machine. Crash, bang, tinkle. Brian and Laura, who had been cringing in their bed, sprang up at once to rescue Edna from the debacle, but they knew before they touched her that all was up. Poor Edna was dead. Perhaps she had not died from the fall even, but she was dead. Thus was the rather noisy end of Brian's silent mother-in-law. Loved it, absolutely loved it. I thought that was so funny. So excited to read more of those stories. So please, I'm sure after that you'll be dying to get this. So Patricia Highsmith, thank you for listening in. Bye for now.